This is Hannibal here from thehannibaltv.com. We have a UFO related interview tonight with UFO lobbyist Stephen Bassett from the Paradigm Research Group, I believe it's called. You're the executive director there, and you're on top of all the UFO news. I've watched a couple podcasts with you. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing fine. Uh, it's a good day. I just went up to see the eclipse yesterday. Drove 6 hours up, 6 hours back. It was completely overcast. You couldn't even see the sun.
That's too
So the
bad. A
day,
lot of people were saying that would have been the ideal time for the extraterrestrials to reveal themselves if they wanted to be seen.
well, it'll take a few days for the photograph and filming to come in from the totality zones, but you never know. Some things could turn up. Wouldn't shock me.
So, as far as being a UFO lobbyist, could you explain to us what that's all about, please?
I used to be called the UFO lobbyist, but I'm actually a political activist. Always have been. But I got attention by registering as a lobbyist in '96. I was the only person to ever do that. Nobody else was stupid enough. It doesn't pay anything at all. No one will talk to you. So, but it was a first. And so months later, the Washington Post sent out a reporter to interview me, put a huge interview and photo in the Washington Post, front page New York Times, front page of the business section, and that gave me some creds. And so my role as an activist in this field began. Um, I'm still registered as a lobbyist, but I didn't do much of that. No one would talk to me. I work with the media. I felt my job was to communicate with people, try to get this issue to general people, also to communicate with media, get them more involved. So over the last 28 years, nearly 600 articles have been written about my work, right, or me. So, that's not a huge amount, but it's not bad. And I probably generated several thousand articles in general with getting media to cover the issue. And then communication. I'm approaching 2,000 interviews, more than probably anybody living or dead. I've also conducted a number of conferences. I've spoken at scores more. So communicating the issue continues. And of course, social media presence, which can never get too big. Follow me at Steve Bassett on Twitter X, please. That's what I call it, Twitter X. It will always be Twitter X to me. In fact, he should change the name to Twitter X, but that's another matter. So that's what I do. I'm a political activist. Still am.
Has it gotten any easier to get the media to do stories these days? I see some outlets like News Nation doing a lot, but I don't see as much on CNN or the bigger companies.
Well, the amount of print coverage is extraordinary. On my website, paradigmresearchgroup.org, under resources, in the menu, you can scroll down to print media archive, and what you will find there is links to 15,000 articles going back to the 1940s, mostly though recent. And this is legitimate English language press. It's not paranormal stuff. It's not silly press or pretty fringe journalism. It's legitimate professional journalism. 15,000 articles in the last year was the most ever. This year we'll probably top that in around 2,000. And if you go there and read, you can see they've been covering this all along. There's an enormous amount of coverage of this issue. But how many people search? How many people can follow? How many media entities? But they've done it. What they haven't done, and of course I want them to do, is investigate it. To send out the old Woodward and Bernsteins to dig into the various and sundry areas that they're hiding and expose it. But they won't do that. The media has an understanding with the government. We're not going to go there, but we will cover the subject as it unfolds in the public domain. And so there's plenty to be learned. Print media archive, paradigmresearchgroup.org. It's a huge resource, I assure you. You will be appreciative.
So, who do you think's responsible that more people don't know that UFOs are real and there's visitations occurring? Who's keeping things quiet? Is it the whoever's operating these UFOs that want it quiet? Is it all of the governments? Like, who's responsible for it?
The United States government is responsible for the truth embargo, without question. It's not a UFO cover-up. It is a truth embargo. It's a legal policy. Our allies went along with it because, well, we helped win. We were key to winning, saving them from the Axis powers, defeated them. We also were the first nuclear power, and so they went along with it, and they're still going along with it. In other words, it's your call, United States. When it's time to tell the world about the ET presence, it's your call, not ours. Do they know about it? Does Canada know there's an ET presence? UK, Australia? Of course they do. In fact, every developed nation in the world knows. But there's an embargo. The reasons that Russia or the Soviet Union and Communist China go along with this embargo is probably more complicated, but I can sort of understand it. They've chosen to do it as well. Of course, they embargo a lot of things. The ETs, let me put it this way, they have the ability to end the truth embargo anytime they want. But they're doing so much to advance the process, the disclosure process, I call it, that I happen to believe they want it to happen, that they're fine with it happening, but they're not prepared to force majeure it, but they certainly contributed to it. And so whatever their timeline is, their patience has not yet run out, to put it that way. You know?
Where do you think they're coming from, and who are they, in your opinion?
The overwhelming probability is star-to-star travel. It's nothing more than a workaround around relativity, which, if you're traveling directly through space in a linear way, has enormous obstacles, insurmountable, really. But if you can move through space in a different way so that you're not actually having to go relativistic, then you could possibly go from star to star. We already have scientists closing in on this. There's a lot of work being done, and that's just in the public sector. It's not hard to find it. I think we're 20, 25 years away from star travel. And I happen to believe that is critical to the timing of what's going on. That is that on their clock, on their calendar, that's the drop dead date. In other words, whatever's going to happen has got to happen before we can build a starship. And that's just my thinking. I've expressed it many times. That's their calendar. What's on our calendar? Our calendar is we don't want to tell the truth because we'll be embarrassed. We love these secrets. We love having secrecy. We don't want it to end. Whatever. The human race and the countries have for embargoing this issue and keeping it there. There are many. The ETs have their own reason, but they do not seem to be object ultimately to the confirmation of their presence.
How long do you think they've been coming here for?
There's no reason that ETs of one type or another could not have been coming here for hundreds of thousands of years. Maybe not the same ones. There's a couple 100 billion stars in this galaxy. And once you solve the star-to-star travel problem, so I have a feeling the galaxy's history is far more entertaining than we can imagine. Obviously, there is some evidence for ancient contact going back thousands of years. I think the Ancient Aliens has done a good job in at least outlining that. Some of it is weak, some of it's pretty convincing. But the most important era begins in 45. Whatever the reasons for being around prior to 45, that changed in 1945. When we dropped 2 atomic bombs on innocent women and children, our own species, and vaporized them. All of a sudden, the activity in our skies increased. A crashed vehicle was obtained. And in this case, a news release was put out. There may have been other crashes prior to that, but they were very contained. This one was not. And then there was a massive flyover of Washington, D.C. in 52, and so forth and so forth. So something changed in 1945. I think I know what it is. And triggered how would you say, an adjustment to their engagement of us. And that adjustment and that engagement has been following a relatively defined pattern for 77 years now, and is leading somewhere soon.
I've heard that nuclear bombs going off, at least at one point, can screw up how these UFOs actually travel and can actually cause UFO crashes in some cases. Do you think their interest has to do with that, or what would your theory on the UFO's interest in nuclear power and nuclear weapons be?
there are two. It's well, obviously, if you're flying anything near a nuclear explosion, that's not good. That's not good for your ride. Um, uh, exactly. So the issue, they have two issues with nuclear weapons, I believe. One is that, and I think this is nice of them and appropriate. I think they probably feel or think that, given it takes several billion years for a planetary object to emerge from an accretion disk around a sun, eventually have a life develop on that accretion disk or that planet, usually almost certainly needing water, and for it to then ultimately get to a point where either via panspermia or seeding or just complex process of life emerging from a primordial soup, you have a life cycle begin on the planet, right? And life starts evolving. It takes a couple billion years for that, all of that process, which involves uncounted numbers of various animals and species coming and going, dying, competing in a survival of the species method, to evolve an entity capable of building computers and going to the moon. Billions of years. And therefore, for that species, because it's not illogical to destroy itself by the use of advanced technology, would seem a waste. That's a bad, kind of a waste of 2 billion years. Just as we would feel the same way, I think, about any other civilization if we were in the same position as they. So they would prefer we didn't destroy ourselves. That's one reason. The second reason, and this is the one that really matters, is this, and it's common sense. You don't have to be a genius to figure this out. Any advanced species is not going to let a developing species like ours, with the history we have, build starships that can go 10, 20, 100,000 light years, load them up with nuclear weapons, and head on out where no man has gone before. They're not going to do it. They'd have to be insane, stupid, whatever. They're simply not going to allow it. We would do the same thing if we were in their position. And so the fact that we built those bombs, tested that bomb, dropped them on our own species, and then built 80,000 of them, nuclear weapons, eventually about that much stockpile by the mid-1980s, all of that confirms to them that there's going to have to be a come to Jesus moment here. And to me, that is going to happen post-disclosure, ideally. But it could happen pre-disclosure if we still haven't disclosed as we approach that Starship creation timeline, in which they have open contact with us and we discuss the nuclear weapon matter. What we may discuss other things, but we will discuss the nuclear weapon matter. And I think I know what they're going to say. They're going to say, "You're not leaving that planet with those nukes. I mean, just forget about it." Right? The galaxy is not open carry. You're not coming out here with those nukes. So you can build a ship, but it'll never leave the ground. And if you load it up with nukes, well, it'll create a mess when we blow it up. And so we're going to have a little discussion about that. I think this is where this has been heading since August of 1945. It was locked in at that moment. Nothing has been presented to me to convince me otherwise. No other alternative explanation for the ET conduct over the last 77 years points in another direction, as far as I'm concerned. There's possibilities, certainly. You can come up with all kinds of possibles. But in terms of their behavior and what's going on, this is what it's about. And so we're going to have a decision to make pretty soon. First disclosure, then open contact a year or two later, and then a decision. You want to come out here with us? Get rid of the nukes. If you don't get rid of the nukes, you're not going anywhere. Now what else we discuss, I don't know, but I'm looking forward to that.
We've heard of situations where they've both allegedly activated nuclear weapons and shut them down. Obviously, I think some communication happened with the U.S. and Russia, where they came to an understanding that it wasn't either country activating them themselves, and a nuclear war was supposedly avoided. But do you think that actually happened? That they actually activated a nuclear weapon at one point? And was that just to show power, or do you think that that's not true?
Oh, it's just ample evidence. Uh, and of course, Robert Hastings deserves great credit, as does Robert Salas, but not the only ones. That the ETs have turned off the nukes here and in the Soviet Union several times. And at some point, which kind of caught, I think, our government Air Force off guard a little bit. So a number of these incidents occurred, and men, primarily men that were either security or in the silo working the missiles down below, have actually started coming forward. There's actually an article written in the Minot newspaper about the Minot event in 1966, I think it was. At some point, I think they clamped down on it, meaning, okay, here's the deal, guys. Any more event like this happens, you're not going to say anything, or we're going to bury you so far in the desert in New Mexico. Yeah, they'll never find. They'll find you when they start excavating New Mexico, therefore we don't know how many times they've shut down the cases, but we know a number. We have the witnesses to a number of them. We have testimony from Russians or Soviet citizens about shutdowns in the Soviet Union, and it appears at this point, in at least one instance of turn-ons, both here and in the Soviet Union, where they didn't turn the missiles off, they set them into launch mode. And so the SAC base guys with the keys are running around down there in the basement going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And they're thinking, this is not going to look good on my resume. And then at the very last second, they turned the launch mode out. This has happened. And so when you hear me discussing post-disclosure and open contact and all that stuff, and this agenda I'm referring to, that those incidents play a huge role in that. So if someone doesn't believe those instances that have taken place, then my other thinking about this subject in terms of where it's going should mean nothing to them.
And as far as what's going on, like with Russia and the Ukraine right now, if a nuclear bomb was put into action, do you think they would do anything about it, or no? Because I've heard Jacques Vallée say that it's come close a few times and they haven't done anything about it.
That is correct. We almost had a nuclear war over the Cuban Missile Crisis. We later learned that there were already nukes in Cuba when they came forward to us, or when Kennedy came forward with the information about that, and of course it went to the UN and all that. We were told they didn't have nukes, and of course we had to prevent that. But they were really serious about preventing it, and I was there. I watched it all. I was 16 years old, and so it was pretty intense. Now we know why it was so intense. Why they were sending U-2s over there and considering invading. Because Kennedy, at least, was told, and a relative of the general, I don't have it handy, but I've read the account, was told by this relative that he was a high-ranking general, Army, I think, and he stated to his near his death that he was the one that told Kennedy that in fact there were nukes already in Cuba. And then there was a near event that took place involving a submarine. The captain chose not to fire. We've had some other close moments in Europe. So we've almost had a nuclear war on a number of occasions, and these are the ones we need to know about. So how long are we going to get away with this? And then, of course, we have tested 1,800. I forget how many thousands of tests were done. It's easy to find. There's some incredible graphics out there about this. In fact, there's one I know about. I need to get it back in play, which shows every single test that was done, and literally launched a cancer epidemic. If you go and study the cancer incidents in the United States, and you look at the curve, it matches up directly with the testing of nuclear weapons all over the place, not just in the United States, but elsewhere. We literally launched a cancer epidemic on the planet, testing thousands of nuclear weapons, eventually underground, which is helpful but not necessarily prevents us from serious contamination in a number of ways. And so that's how stupid we are. That's how primitive we are. That's how dangerous we are. And we're going to have to deal with that pretty soon, one way or the other.
I heard Tom DeLonge say that Operation Starship Prime, where we let off a nuclear weapon in space, may have had ulterior motives rather than just the stupidity of doing that. But I heard him say that was kind of during the Cold War era, and he thinks that Russia and the U.S. were kind of okay with that test because there may have been an ulterior motive related to ETs for that. Have you heard anything about that?
No, I have not. I mean, I think that came across my internet radar at some point. I didn't dive into it. It's certainly possible they tested it in space, and that's I think very likely that they agreed to it. There was sort of understanding between the two nations about this. That would be intriguing. To me, it's a little less likely, but it's possible. Is it possible they did that in order to, I don't know, send a message to the ETs? I mean, if they did, the ETs would have laughed their ass off. I can assure you. Is it a stupid thing to do? Oh, God, yes. That's about as far as I can go on that. But I happen to have a degree in physics, which is no big deal. Most of that physics is not even valid anymore, or it's taught in high school. The point is that no, I've been attuned to science my whole life, and you don't have to be very smart or be a scientist to know that you have zero chance of defending yourself against an interstellar species. Period. It's not even close, and so they are a potential threat. And it's nothing wrong with keeping that in mind. But instituting policies designed to deal with that threat is basically taking your money and putting it in a giant pile and setting it on fire. But it's very human. It's very anthropomorphic. That's what we do. We just love to make weapons and kill each other. And so why shouldn't we do that with ETs? Well, because they're interstellar and their physics is so beyond ours. So to the extent that people are told by the government there are no ETs here, I guess there's no reason to think about that. But there are people that do know there are ETs, and we do think about ETs, and we do think about it. It's time the whole world thought about it. It's one of several hundred reasons why the truth embargo cannot end soon enough and needs to end very soon. It needs to end early this year. And Mark Warner, the chairman of the Senate Intel Committee of the United States Congress, has the ability to end that truth embargo anytime he wants to.
I've heard that through files that George Knapp kind of leaked from Russia, because he was over there supposedly during a time when U.S. and Russian relations weren't bad. That some of these military files that came out that there were actually instances of Russian military craft getting shot down after trying to be aggressive with ETs. Have you heard about that? And have you heard of anything like that with the U.S.?
There is a book about that by Frank Frescino. I think it's Freschino. It's called Air Wars of the 1950s, I believe. It's an area that's gotten little research. Don't know why. Will be kind of tough, frankly. But Frank gave it a run. Hope he's still with us. It's very possible that in the early years of the modern era, which starts in 1947, that we tried to shoot them down here, and Russia or Soviet Union tried to shoot them down there or whatever. It's less likely, but possible they may have succeeded in shooting one down. But according to Frank, and this is something that really needs to be researched. It was years ago he did this. I think somebody with more money and a modern tech should be looking into this. But his claim was that during that period in the 50s, commercial planes started to fall, and military planes just fell out of the sky. Boom, 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 boom. And back then, 3 television networks with 15 minutes of news a night, The newspapers are primarily almost regional or city papers. I mean, New York Times is a big paper, but essentially it's New York, right? You had the AP and the UPI, but the idea that we were going to get a lot of information coming together about planes flying out of the sky, no, falling out of the sky. Now, any plane crash, boom, the whole world knows about it. I get it, but that was the 50s. And so there could have been a couple of hundred, particularly military craft. And his contention is that was their way of saying, don't do this. Don't screw with us. And if it's true, it's extremely important. Assuming that the entities back then are the same entities we're dealing with now, it says something very important about them. If necessary, they will kill you. That's worth noting. They may be the absolutely non-destructive civilization now. They may not even have any thoughts of having wars because they've transcended all that. I get that. But apparently, if they need to kill you, they will. And trying to shoot them down is a big mistake. So hopefully we'll learn more about that. I'm hoping after disclosure, we'll learn exactly how many missile flights were shut down, how many times they actually turned them into launch mode, both here and anywhere else in the world, how many attempts were made to shoot them down, did we successfully shoot any down, and how many planes did they drop out of the sky in order to send us a message? Don't do that, you stupid apes. These are things I'd like to know. And I assure you, we're not going to find out until after disclosure.
What do you think about those incidents about a year and a month ago now, where obviously the Chinese weather balloon was shot, or the Chinese spy balloon was shot down?
Mm-hmm.
Then, like within the same week, only days later, supposedly missiles worth $750,000 were used to shoot other UAPs down. For the Chinese spy balloon, we saw pictures of it after. For the other three, we never really saw any pictures or proof of what was shot down, and it kind of just left the media. We heard some things about maybe they were hobby balloons, but I think one of them took 2 missiles to shoot down.
That's because they missed the first one. Okay. The first one missed. That's why they had to take another one. That cost $1.5 million to shoot that down. Look, it was a complete fiasco, and exactly what the U.S. government deserves for keeping this truth embargo in place so long. Obviously, the U.S. government's made a fool of itself over this issue repeatedly. But this was very, very, very visible. Got a lot of attention. So my take on it is this: everybody's spying on everybody else, including high altitude balloons and satellites. We got Google Earth. You don't think they got Google Earth in China, right? I mean, they can use Google Earth, come down and get the address off in front of your house. So, but they were spying incessantly on each other. Okay, one of those is high altitude balloons. They fly over, and they're cheaper than satellites, and maybe they can do things that satellites can't do. And so, but the thing is, they're supposed to fly over at 80,000 feet. That's the deal, right? Why? Because there's no air traffic at 80,000 feet. So, they just fly on over and take a bunch of shots. And we probably do the same thing. Only this balloon sprung a leak. It happens. And it started coming down. And it got down into the air traffic zone. Now, what are you going to do? It's a Chinese spy balloon. But you're going to say, well, it's a Chinese spy balloon, so we really can't do anything about that. And just hope our airplanes don't fly into it. There's that. And then there's the fact that at the time that happened, the interest in the subject exploded. We're getting more sightings than ever before. Everybody's watching the sky. Anything up there, right, they're reporting it. So obviously a balloon comes down. That's getting a lot of attention. What do you do if you're the White House? What they wanted to do is for it to just chill out, let the damn thing cruise on over the United States, and then go over Africa or something. But that was not going to happen. Once it made it into the news, the American people, well, they expected some action on this. And they had no choice. They had to shoot it down. But they couldn't shoot it down over land because that was a big-ass device underneath that balloon. You shoot that down, that hits lands in somebody's house, big lawsuit. So they had to wait while the thing floats across the United States, and all the press is going crazy. It was a total fiasco for the White House. And then finally it gets over the Atlantic, and they can shoot it down, and it goes in the Atlantic, and they can also go and recover the debris. Okay, all good. One problem: since it took so long, you got all this time is the damn thing is flying. A whole lot of people down there going, "Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's a cool thing, man. That's getting a lot of attention." You got, and the fraternity guys are getting together and say, "Look, that arms supply store down the road. You think they got any balloons down there?" Right? So I think some guys or people got together and said, "Let's get a balloon of our own." Hobby, no. Response to this, to take advantage of it. I mean, this is the age of TikTok, the age of Instagram. This is quality material. Do you realize how many hits you could get if you could actually get this up and get credit? And so the next thing you know, a couple of these things are turning up. Now, what do you do with the White House, right? You can send up some F-22s or 35s, whatever the hell they got, spend a fortune going up, find out what the hell they are, and report back. Well, it's looks to me like it's probably some fraternity prank. What do you think we should do? Well, just let it go. Meanwhile, other people are seeing it, and then what's going on? What's going on? You could say, well, it's a fraternity prank. Send that to the New York Times, and now the people are really starting to see just how asinine all of this is. So it's a bad deal. They can't win. And so what they chose to do was to shoot these down too. Now, exactly why they didn't shoot them down with bullets, right? With whatever they use for these planes, I don't know. Don't know, but they used the missiles. We don't really know how big they were. Why didn't they describe them? They want to get this over with. Right? Let's get these things out of the sky. Hope no more pranks are put up there. This whole thing is a massive embarrassment for the most powerful nation on the planet, right? Wouldn't be an embarrassment if they had confirmed the ET presence 40 years ago. Wouldn't be a big deal at all. And so they shoot him down. Now, one was shot down over Huron, one was shot down over the tundra. And people say, "Where's the wreckage? Where's the wreckage?" Like, yeah, sure. You just hop on out there and get the wreckage. Really? And the second thing, you don't want to show the wreckage. What are you going to do? You're going to go get the wreckage and bring it back. Everybody's going to know, what's the wreckage? What is it? You say, well, it looks like it's a fraternity prank. No, you don't want anything more to do with it. You just want it to go away. And if a missile actually hit this thing, it blew it into pieces. You got nothing. And so they just wished it away. But the interest in the subject now is larger than it's ever been. Questions are raised. The Twitter X goes on it. Right? Every detail, learn everything, drove him crazy. And maybe it taught him a lesson. End this stupid ass truth embargo, because it does nothing but make a fool out of the Pentagon and everybody else connected to that every single day. Just stop it, please, for God's sakes. That's my take on the great Chinese balloon fiasco.
We heard about a month ago or so, Ross Coulthart said that through his military contacts that the one that was shot down over Alaska could have possibly been a silver cylindrical UFO. Did you hear anything about that?
Again, it's whatever was hung underneath that balloon. Now, if you're saying that it wasn't a balloon, it was a cylindrical UFO, I don't believe it. We can't shoot them down, right? We just can't. And so it might have been a cylindrical thing hanging underneath the balloon. I mean, again, these Chinese spy balloons have vast equipment, very extensive, substantial. Could have been. It could have been. Both of these could have been more Chinese balloons, but I doubt it, because the reason China is not stupid. They're not going to be flying balloons at 50,000 feet. And the idea that 3 Chinese weather balloons all lost started losing their air pressure or their air and dropped down, I doubt it. So we don't know. And the list of things that we don't know is just long and long and growing longer. And I'm not interested in chasing them down. They'd love us to. They'd love us to research and worry and think about these various incidents and just obsess with it, as long as we don't challenge the truth embargo, as long as we don't give them a hard time about that. Yeah, well, I'm interested in one thing and one thing only: ending this truth embargo. I'm not going to go down any alleys, any threads, or any rabbit holes. I don't care what the hell happens. It doesn't matter until this embargo ends. It's just wasting time in a way. Not that I want people to pay attention and so forth. And if they want to get into it, that's fine. I'm not criticizing that. I'm simply saying that understand, for your own informational purposes, fine. But it means nothing. Absolutely nothing. You could report 1 million more sightings. You could provide video or whatever, or cameras. You could do it over the next 50 years and the government would not care one iota. And the truth embargo would not end. And so I'm tired. I'm not going to play their game anymore. We've been playing it for 77 years. I've been playing it for 28, and I'm not going to play it anymore. We need to end the truth embargo. Focus on that. And if you've got a few $100 million and you want to change the world a little bit, you could go into global warming, save the whales, whatever the hell, but consider putting some serious money in this issue. It's only the most important issue in history, but it's almost never funded at all because, well, there are no ETs here, and the government's filled your head with propaganda or made it stigmatized so that you won't embarrass yourself by focusing this issue. But this issue is now of age. We need money. We need a huge amount of money to ensure that this embargo ends soon. And then we need money to deal with the post-disclosure world and the implications of that. And so I'm just putting that out there. It has nothing to do with the fact that I just converted Paradigm Research Group to a nonprofit. Nothing to do with that. And it could accept tax-deductible donations, but it just coincides.
I've been told one of the reasons that they might not want to go public about it is these alleged abductions. If they're real, they don't want people to be freaked out that these abductions are actually happening. Do you believe that they are happening, or is that more questionable to you?
To quote Gary Nolan, I think it was News Nation or Fox, 100% abductions are taking place. Contact is taking place. 100%. And yeah, it is a factor in their thinking, the government's thinking. On the list of things that they are not looking forward to answering or responding to is, are abductions taking place, Madam Press Secretary? The answer will have to be yes. Is there anything that the government can do about it? The answer is no. Well, let me put it this way. While the truth embargo is underway, no. Once the truth embargo ends, that might improve. The list of things that could be done to mitigate abductions is not a short list. But it would have to be in an open context where the government is going to help Americans or whatever who are having to deal with this, provide some way to assist them with this, make it harder on the ETs, whatever. I mean, that's not out of the question. But under the truth embargo, screw it. We're not going to do anything. All right. Which raises a very significant prospect that I like to mention. I give it a very measurable probability that if we actually get disclosure on this from our president, and which will, of course, be followed by the head of state of every major nation in the world within probably a week, there is a measurable possibility that the ETs will end non-consensual engagement. No more abductions. That would be the right thing to do, I think. And that would be a notable thing if you happen to be a contactee.
Maybe some people would volunteer to be contactees in those cases, depending on how traumatic the situations are, because I've heard some of them can have good experiences and other abductees can have terrible ones.
That's an excellent post-disclosure item. I think disclosure will be followed by open contact within a year or two. But it could be 6 months. Why not immediately? I think that the ETs are, I think if I were them, I would give the planet a reasonable amount of time to do a little autodidactic investigation or learning curve to, not just autodidactic, but just a huge learning curve where the world gets itself up to speed on this. There's plenty to learn, and there'll be no barrier to that post-disclosure. And then once the world has got a pretty good handle on at least what we know, uh, most of the, I think, of fear will be mitigated, and the idea of open contact will be quite reasonable. So yeah, that's when you do it. I give it 6 months, a year, 2 years. Now, if open contact takes place and they've ended the contact, one of the things, abduction work or genetic work, it's possible it'll come up. We want to talk to you about the nukes. You got to get rid of them. Okay. You're not going anywhere if you get rid of them. And then secondly, look, that work that we were doing with your species actually was pretty important to us. We'd like to continue to do that. However, given the circumstances, volunteer basis. And so are you open to that? Now, I can assure you, if that came into play and the U.S. government announced that the ETs would like to continue doing their genetic work, possibly with a little more consideration, a little more polite, whatever, but on a volunteer basis. The number of people who volunteer would shock you. I assure you, there'll be no lack of volunteers. And if I were the ETs, I'd say, look, we will compensate you. How would they do that? Well, guess what? I'm not exaggerating. They've already identified one asteroid that has in it more gold than has been mined on this Earth in the entire history of the human race. So they just have to chip a little off the asteroid, right? Can't bring it all down, blow the market up completely, but yeah, just chip a little on that. Here you go. Here's a couple 100,000 in gold for you and for you. Whatever. I don't know. I make a joke, but the thing is that, like many things, humor sometimes is much more possible than you might think. So the idea of volunteer contact after an open contact era has begun, so that they can do the work that they obviously need to do, would not shock me at all. It seems like a sci-fi novel. It may be even in a novel at this point. How many sci-fi novels do we know about? And so that's a possibility.
As far as cattle mutilations and animal mutilations, do you think it's our government doing them? I know they happen all over the world, or do you think it's ETs? Because we've heard some people like Stephen Greer say that these are kind of black programs doing this, but other people say that the tools being used are too high tech.
ETs. Governments don't need to do that. You don't need to go suck a lot of blood out of some poor rancher's cow and then leave them there with some body parts cut out. You can buy a cow. You can buy a cow, right? Just buy the damn thing, right? Just have some ranchers buy some cows and ship them off to Area 51, whatever. Now, the ETs need this material. I think it's very likely. The evidence, I think, points to it's part of their abduction program, their genetic work. Cattle is not the only thing that they do this with, but it's notable. Cow blood, very similar to human blood. And the materials they take from the cows are particularly sensitive parts of their body in terms of possibly, what's the word I'm looking for? Working with, right? These are highly, again, I'm not Gary Nolan, but it's not an accident that they choose certain selected parts. This is ETs. That doesn't mean somebody could fake a cattle mutilation. It's worth noting that the ranchers have lost a lot of cows, but they haven't sued the government. They haven't complained much at all. I mean, occasionally one of them will say something, but it's like these things are just, they're gone, and what can you do? Let me tell you, go try to steal a couple of cows or cattle from a rancher in North Dakota. See what happens to you. If they don't kill you right then, you will go to jail. You will be fine. But in this case, no. I've always had this suspicion. This is my sense of humor, maybe. But it wouldn't shock me if we learned down the line that a lot of these ranchers weren't really making a big deal out of losing animals this way, in a fairly awful way, because the government was paying them under the table to just, here's the cost of that animal plus an extra fee for your irritation and discomfort, just don't talk about it. Don't make a big deal out of it. You're okay. You haven't been financially hurt. Wouldn't shock me at all. Whatever it takes to keep the truth embargo going.
As far as David Grush goes, what are your thoughts on all of his claims?
National hero, possibly a Presidential Medal of Freedom awardee down the line. I want to be in the East Room when that happens. Whistleblower, good man. In addition to the death threats, by doing what he did, he knew he was stepping into the social media barrel, and he was going to get a long run there, and he has. Hope to meet him someday. I was in the Senate, the House hearing room when he testified. In fact, I'm in the photo. There were a number of them, but one of them was picked as one of the Time 100 photos of the year, Time magazine, and I'm in that one. Very happy about that. I got it up on my most social media sites, of course.
As far as Tim Burchett goes, one of the congressmen that really seems to be fighting for disclosure, what do you think about him?
He's the bad cop. The people right now, the Congress is playing good cop, bad cop with the DOD. The good cop is the Senate Intelligence Committee, very orderly, very thoughtful, very polite, what have you. Get that legislation out, right? Of course, that Sumer bill was a little strong, but again, done with all the usual decorums. Good cop. Meanwhile, over at the House, bad cop. You got Burchett. He's going on the shows. He's saying, here's ETs, here's his extraterrestrials, here's the truth embargo was wrong, it's not in tomorrow. And then after the Schumer amendment was gutted, he went back, said it again. Then he created a UAP caucus in the House. All right. They'd like to get a special select committee in the House, UAP select committee, which would be a hell of an accomplishment, except that you can't, that can only be done by the House majority leader. You know, the committee can create a subcommittee, but create a select committee, it's got to be, Johnson and who knows? I mean, who knows how long he'll even be the majority leader. So they're just causing all kinds of good trouble. So Burchett, what can I say? Guy is fearless. He's going to say exactly what he wants to say. He's very authentic, and he's recruited others, right? And of course, they held the subcommittee hearing that took the testimony of Grush. It was handled very well. They've tried very hard to be nonpartisan, and they've succeeded. And some of the people that are in that UAP caucus are some of the most partisan people in the entire Congress, which is a perfect example of why this is a truly nonpartisan issue. Another reason to get involved, because I can assure you the American people are just pretty much fed up with partisan politics, really fed up with partisan politics. And this is an opportunity to see their representatives who get paid $200,000 a year or so. Of course, it takes $5 million to get the job, but still, they'd love to see them acting like adults and being nonpartisan as much as possible and getting things done. So again, big fan of Tim Burchett. He invited me to lunch. Trouble is, he invited me, but getting back to him to get that invitation, actually have lunch with him, that's a different matter. But eventually I'll get a chance to sit down with Tim and have lunch. In fact, there's a number of people in Congress I really need to meet with. Jamie Raskin, obviously Mark Warner, the entire Senate Intel Committee, and Anna Paulina Luna, Nancy Mace, even Andre Carson Gallego, everybody that's been involved in this issue, I would love to be able to meet and talk to, but it's not easy. And I am an activist, therefore a little more risky in their view. I get that. I'm actually a safe kitten. I'm just a kitten. So we'll see. And I also have a message, which is I have a message, right? In other words, I'm going to sit down there and tell them what I think they need to know. And what I just told you, I don't think anybody is telling them this. I'm not saying they don't know it. I think that many of them do know the truth embargo is not what it seems. I'm sorry, that the disclosure process underway is not what it seems. And this is the most important thing I'll tell your viewers or listeners here tonight. I've been repeating it hundreds of times. I'm the only person that's saying this. Just saying, I'm the only person that's saying this. Is that if you want to understand what's happening and not have a nervous breakdown, You need to understand, certainly going back to 17 in the New York Times article, but absolutely going back to 20 and the first legislation that was put forward by the Senate Intel Committee. Really back to 17, frankly. Everything that you've been seeing unfold, there have been, I don't know, something like 6,000 articles have been written about all this in the newspaper. Everything the government is doing, the Congress is doing, everything about the witnesses coming forward, all of it has nothing to do with trying to find out what the phenomenon is about. What is a Tic Tac? Where do they come from? It has nothing to do with that. Zero to do with it. Well, wait a minute. Well, then, if that's what is it about? Why are they doing this? It's actually not complicated. It's pretty simple. If you believe the truth embargo's days are numbered, and they are, again, we're not the only nation in the world. Putin or Xi Jinping or several other heads of state could end the truth embargo tomorrow. And I assure you, they've got plenty of gun camera footage in their files to bring out to make the point, and God knows what else. If you think the truth embargo's days are numbered, you have got to get the situation together. You have to be ready for it. You can't have it. I mean, Xi Jinping could confirm the ET presence tomorrow. And before you know it, the rest of the world is following suit within days. And then Biden is going to have to come forward and say, well, I guess we got ETs here. And then the next day, all hell breaks loose, right? You're going to have everybody wanting everything, everywhere, all at once. It's a good name for a film. And what do you got? They'll be jamming every briefing room in Washington, D.C. The congressional briefing rooms, the White House briefing rooms, the Department of Defense briefing room, the Federation of American Scientists, CIA, whatever, all of it, they're going to be jamming them with thousands of questions. The American people are going to be, literally their hair is going to be on fire. What's going on? What's going on? You got to tell me now. Chaos reigns, film at 11. That's what'll happen. That's not good. That's a mess. And so in order to avoid that, you need to have all the structure in place before that day comes, before disclosure takes place, not after it takes place. And so creating the legislation, setting up the offices, providing, all the various bells and whistles, interviewing the witnesses, getting the Congress up to speed, getting reports and classified reports and people up there talking to them privately. All of that is to set up the infrastructure so that when disclosure happens, we are ready to receive. Sort of like, Walmart prepares for Black Friday, right? They got to be ready for that mob, right? When they open those doors, those people are coming in, baby. And if you haven't got it together, they're going to roll right over you. It's exactly like that. And so the problem they face, and it's a problem, it's a catch-22. Joseph Hellyer, one of the great novels of the 20th century, some people think it's the best novel of the 20th century, Catch-22, is that they have to set this up so they're ready for disclosure, but they can't tell you they're setting it up because they're to get ready for disclosure. Because to do that, that's disclosure, right? So as the president come out and say, look, we got a whole lot going on here. We got some legislation and we're coordinating that. We got some witnesses, so forth, because, we're expecting to disclose the extraterrestrial presence pretty soon. And we need to have this ready. People are going, what? Disclose what? See, and this is their problem. They created this problem. I mean, they've been lying about this issue for 77 years. The embargo was 77 years old. And so that's the problem, right? And so what they had to do was stay between the lines, avoid saying this, avoid saying that, don't use that word, don't go too far. Find a proper basis to proceed, perceived threat, potential threat. Don't get into contact. Don't even bring it up. Just stay between the lines and just keep moving forward, right? Don't answer any exotic questions. Get all this done. They pretty much, with the Schumer amendment, Schumer bill, the UAP Disclosure Act, that was it. That they pretty much had it all together at that point. They had everything they needed at that point. But then that was a bridge too far, and they gutted the bill. So all of this is to prepare for disclosure. They already know what it is. They know a lot about it. They've spent probably billions of dollars figuring it out. And so if you're a little perplexed or confused about what's going on, that's the answer. That it all becomes clear at that point. Once you realize this is not about finding out about ETs, it is about preparing for the acknowledgement of ET presence by our president, hopefully. And once you go there, then you get it. It all makes sense.
The last guy I'll ask you about today is former Pentagon UFO Chief who recently retired from that, and I think he's
Yeah.
working for the Department of Energy now, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. Does he know more than he lets on?
Well, yeah. I mean, everybody in everybody working in classified world knows more about stuff than they're letting on. That's a given. This is a Shakespearean story, and I've talked about it a lot. I'm going to be asked about it a lot, and unless I'm corrected and convinced that I'm corrected, I'm going to continue to say exactly this. Sean Kirkpatrick is the Shakespearean character in this play. He was brought in. He had credentials to run Arrow, the final end entity. Is it well designed, appropriately named, to be the director. Not to find out what the phenomena was, they already know, but to be the director of Arrow, because when disclosure comes, they're going to need Arrow. Now, whether or not he knew that when he came on board, or maybe figured it out after a while, don't know. Or whether or not they completely told him and explained to him, this is what's going to go. This is your job. Hold the fort till we can get to the point where we can end this policy. We don't know. But it was a bad gig. It was a really bad gig. Part of the reason is, again, people like Kirkpatrick, they don't hang out on social media. They don't know that place. They don't want anything to do with it. You become the director of Arrow, and from day one, you've just entered the Twitter X world. You have entered the social media world, whether you like it or not. And I'm sure he was not thrilled with how that went. And so things are moving on, not as fast as they should have. Bad things kept happening that made it difficult for the Senate Intel Committee to get this done. And so it dragged on. He's taken a lot of grief. And I'm sure he's getting really frustrated because he wasn't hired to disclose the ET president. He was hired to be the director of Arrow when they needed. That's all. But he had to do something, so they're doing some things, but they didn't have much money. Gillibrand knew that. She knew they weren't getting much money and wanted to know why. I think maybe they gave him a little more, but they didn't want to spend a lot of money. There's nothing for them to do. What? Go and reprove what the government's known for 70 years? No. And so this is a bad gig, but he's hanging in there. And then David Grush turns up. And Grush spills the beans. He states to Ross Coulthard, to Leslie Kean, Ralph Blumenthal, and eventually under oath to the House subcommittee, we have non-human tech, non-human bodies. And during the hearing, he indicated he knows where those non-human tech vehicles are, but can't say in public setting. Whoa. And there is Kirkpatrick sitting over there at Arrow, the guy that's running the department that's supposedly trying to find out about this. And he can't touch it. He can't say a damn thing. And he knows it. And he knows the questions are going to be coming and he can't answer them. He knows at that point he is screwed. And then he has to make some decisions. And he made bad decisions. But I don't want to second guess him. I mean, I don't know what I would have done in that situation. But the first mistake was to attack Grush immediately. Thinking that if he can attack Grush and diminish him, then that separates him and he's less likely to get any questions and so forth. Somebody leaked Grush's medical records. We still don't know who it was. Didn't work, backfired. There was social media attacks, didn't work, backfired. But so then, it's even worse for Kirkpatrick. Now he's getting really pounded away in the internet and getting more frustrated, more angry. And finally, he's had enough. And he resigns. Okay? Good enough. Put it behind him. Move on. And he continued to be attacked. He was given a job right away. I mean, they kind of knew that, we really screwed this guy over. So I'm sure he's going to get a paycheck and be able to continue his life. But it would be a long time before he left social media behind, I can assure you. But then you had the Schumer Amendment come. which was announced 39 days after Grush came forward, put up on the Senate website legislative page one day after the hearing on the 26th of July, and ultimately led to the bill being gutted, which was exactly what Schumer wanted, would set the stage for checkmate on the whole damn thing. And so somebody realized we have really screwed the pooch here. Grush said there's ET tech. Schumer's confirmed there's ET tech. Nolan has confirmed there's ET tech. And now the gutting of the bill to get at an eminent domain confirms there's ET tech. Who hasn't confirmed there's ET tech? And so they panicked and said, we just shut it down. We did it in 1969. We can do it again. They used a Condon report. We're going to use an Arrow report. We're going to get it all done and put it out. It's going to show that there's nothing to any of this. Kirkpatrick's name will be on it. And we'll use that report to then shut down. I don't know what they're going to do. They're going to shut down, I guess. They're going to shut down Arrow. I know what they're going to do, but still, it's going to shut it down. And then, right, we're free. Maybe we'll go try to destroy MUFON. That won't work. But they're trying to pull a 1969 in 2024. In 1969, there was hardly any media of any consequence. There was no internet at all. Now, there's billions of people on social media capable of expressing their opinion about anything, anytime, anywhere, and coming together and networking. And there's podcasting and on and on. This is an act of stupidity that history will marvel at. They put out a report that said there's really nothing to this after all.
I think they're trying to censor you. You were cut out there the last 10 seconds.
Blow up in their face. Okay. Got kicked out there for a second. So Kirkpatrick has gotten a bad deal. My advice to him is simple. Pull a Dr. J. Allen Hynek. Take some time, think about it, and then come back out to the media and basically say, look, this is not right. I don't stand behind this report. This is an attempt to mislead the public, and I repudiate it. And instantly he will go from being a joke to being a hero. Not with everybody, but with plenty of people. And history will be very kind. He'll still probably keep his job, right? It's a little too late for the government to play that game. He has a limited amount of time to do that. If he doesn't, then this disgrace of a report will follow him to his grave. And I don't think he deserves it. I think he's a patriot. He does not deserve this. But I'll tell you, the truth embargo has made fools of much bigger people than him. In fact, it makes a fool of everybody. That's one of the reasons it needs to end. But he still has time to fix this. Question: do I remember the Jaime Maussan incident at the end of the X Conference 2007? You have footage of him having to be held back as he nearly attacked another speaker. I missed that. And I put on the X Conference. I can't be everywhere, so I don't know that, don't know what happened. This is a big issue, and emotions can run high. Hopefully he didn't hit anybody.
Apparently he'll pay you if you could come up with the footage.
Okay. There is footage of the X Conference out there, and I have some of it in my files, deep in my files. I need to start pulling some of that out and doing shit with it, but I'm just not oriented that way. It's, I'm like a funnel, tunnel vision, get the truth embargo, as opposed to putting together fancy little video things. In other words, I'm not a TikTok person. It's probably cost me dearly. I can have 1 million followers by now. But what can I say? Is it too late? I don't know. Apparently the Chinese are running the damn thing. Whatever. But yeah, I've got a lot of footage. I may have that. I doubt it. Usually I have the filming of all of the lectures, not the foo-fa that went on afterwards.
You are going to be appearing at Contact in the Desert coming
Absolutely.
up, of course. Do you want to talk about
Huge,
that and anything
huge
else you
event.
might be coming up?
Absolutely. Big event. Last year was the first year comeback from the COVID was pretty good. This year is going to be much bigger. 70 speakers. 70 speakers, 6 or 7 tracks, 14 panels. Again, Indian Wells Resort, primo. I believe that the entire resort is booked now. All the rooms have been taken. However, plenty of time. If you want to get some rooms elsewhere, you've got to go get them now. I assure you, they're gonna keep filling up. Of course, if you're in Orange County or Los Angeles County for the first time ever, should have been sooner, but for the first time ever, they are putting out day passes. You don't have to buy the whole package. You can buy a day pass and drive on over. If you want, find a Motel 6 and stay over and buy another day pass. But we're hoping a lot of people will simply drive over from LA County, and that's going to happen. It's going to be a big event. It's going to be spectacular, frankly. And I'm involved with quite a few of the programs. And who knows what's going to happen between now and May 30. I mean, we know what happened last year on the last day of the CI, the Contact in the Desert is when a bunch of us, hundreds of us, sat down and watched the live interview of David Grush from Contact in the Desert from the Indian Wells Renaissance Esmeralda Hotel Resort. Who knows what we'll be celebrating this year? So join me at Contact in the Desert, contactinthedesert.com.
Very good. Well, I appreciate you coming on and sharing all your information with us, and I'll let you close this down with whatever message you want to tell the fans.
Hopefully consider supporting New Paradigm Institute. It's going to be the think tank of the post-disclosure world. Paradigm Research Group is going to be putting up a nonprofit support page pretty soon. What was the other thing I was going to say? What got away from me? It should be right there. Well, look, New Paradigm Institute has a page on that website, newparadigminstitute.org, where it makes it very easy for you to contact your 2 senators and your member of Congress. Just boom, bada boom. Send in messages about the fact you want disclosure. We want hearings in front of the Intel Committee. Focus on the Intel Committee. That's the one. Whoever you're communicating with, Intel Committee. So you can do that. If you go to paradigmresearchgroup.org, I have on the top another project called ShiftStorm, SHIFT, ShiftStorm.org, and that's the website for it, or the link to it. And so what's going on there is it shows you how to tag tweet 3 key people, Schumer, Rubio, and Warner. And just send them all kinds of messages on Twitter, right? And there's 1.5 billion people on Twitter. So, and you can do it from anywhere in the world, basically saying, at Senator Schumer, I want hearings on this. I want those hearings to start right away. We want to hear from the witnesses. Send the same message to all 3, change the wording, send it again. We've been filling up their notifications box for almost 2 months now. What do I mean? Any tag tweet like that, at Senator Schumer, blah, 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 yada, yada, goes into their notification box on their account, which they have one. That's monitored by their staff. And so the staff sees hundreds, if not thousands, of tag tweets turning up there going, we want hearings, we want hearings, we want hearings. They're going to call up the senator and say, check the notification box. The senator will go there and start seeing these things, seeing that you want this to happen. So those 2 things, check them out. Get involved. Send the message. Be polite. Don't call. That just messes up their business. You can email through their email form, but you've also got Danny Sheehan's thing where you can contact your members. If you want to contact a senator through email on their site, the address has got to have a New York, Virginia, or Florida address. Otherwise, it doesn't go through. Just let you know. Okay? And you can contact them that way. But anybody, anywhere, in any country can tag tweet them, shiftstorm.org. That's it. I'm done.